Okay, so I will call to order a meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee on July 13th, 2017. I believe it's about 7:02. And if the clerk would call the roll.
I don't have a list of the roll.
Oh, well,
Call who's
maybe
here.
is there one up there?
There you go.
You were, I think Sue in the email to you said there was an outline over there. Yeah, there.
List? All right.
There, yeah, she left you an outline.
Okay.
2 papers.
The chair, Alderwoman Melissa Gully,
Present.
Alderman Mark Cookson, Dowd is here, Kim Clamer,
Yeah.
Paul Bergeron,
I'm here.
Mike Rosenblum. Are you sitting in today?
I'm sitting in for Cookson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just,
I don't know if my name's on that list.
No.
Other than that, so I didn't
So he's
respond,
not
but
here.
no, good.
Robert Hollowell, and Matthew Plant,
Here.
Paul Durant,
Here?
and David Pissonato. Oop, he's not here. Okay.
And I
Brian
believe-
McCarthy, and Director Marshall.
yeah, right. And I believe the Library Board of Trustees is in the process of getting someone to attend these meetings.
Okay.
That was the last communication.
Alderman Sherman.
Yeah, so that was my last communication. Public comments, seeing no members of the public. So our discussion tonight is picking up from where we left off when we last met, which was a couple of months ago. And Director Marchant, along with Director Cummings, put together the draft notes from our last meeting. And if you remember, we took those many goal areas that we had identified, and they ended up being broken up into 7 areas. We ended up with education in the library, public safety, long-term financial planning and efficiencies, natural resources, arts and culture, economic development, right-of-way and infrastructure, and downtown. So those were the areas that we had ended up with. And underneath them are the things that we thought would go in there and fit as objectives to support a goal in each of those areas. Director Marchant has also put together on this single page, it's front and back, marked draft and dated 7/13/17, some examples of consolidated topics and goals, because if you remember, we had talked about taking each of these and developing a goal with then maybe several objectives underneath that we would use to start moving forward with the plan. So she has put those together for us. Since we last met, what Ms. Kleiner and I were talking about before the meeting was, in our budget books, there's some goals and objectives that each of the divisions put forward. And I'm going to ask Kim if she would just send those out to everyone and just give you a chance to look at those and reflect on them. And it may just influence our discussion as we move forward, because I think it's important to hear from them. Although many of you represent the commissions and boards affiliated with those divisions, I think it would be important to just look at those and consider those as we move forward. And I've also been talking with Tracy at the chamber, and we just haven't had a match in a time where she was available. Tonight they have an event. So we're trying to get something in place where we can at least look at what the chamber has for strategic planning also. So just some other things to think about. So do we want to just look at this page that was put together as a summary, the long page as a summary from the other night and our last meeting, and any comments, thoughts as you look at this long page with the headings. Do we want to keep everything where it is? Do we think we should be moving it around? After you left, did you have any thoughts about it? Anyone?
I see some of the topics that could go in other columns, but it occurs to me that last time we might have put them from the other columns to this column, so I think it's a nonstop back and forth where you could argue that it goes either place. It seems pretty reasonable the way it is now.
Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts about? Yeah.
So as we go through this, we should probably coordinate things like the new planning for the river development and the reformulation of this one-way streets, and I know I'm missing one. One other thing we're doing, that, you know, as we do these other projects or planning, it should be incorporated in here.
I think that these are high enough level that they should. For example, the new streets paving program, right, that DPW is doing, I think that that's kind of the invest in infrastructure, right? So I think that if we keep this high enough level, where your goal's kind of high enough, the objectives certainly could include some of that, but if the goals are high enough, then they will include.
Right, because I was thinking as we filter down into more detail, we need to make sure we keep that in mind.
And I think for us, it's going to be a balance of not getting into the weeds with the detail, but keeping it up here. So we've got our goal and those objectives, but then the divisions and the other boards and commissions can deal with the details. So, yes, Alderman Sherman.
Thank you. Just question, kind of a structure question with regard, let's say, to the paving, for instance. Where do we set measurable goals? At this level or at the lower level? It sounds like it's going to be at the lower level. So here we're going to say for infrastructure, for instance, you want to have provide paving improvements to get city streets in a year-to-year maintainable position. And then the paving plan will be specific about where we're going to be. Because at some level, we need to have a goal that can be measured.
Right.
It has to be measured.
Right.
And if we don't measure these, then the ones below must be. Otherwise, we're just not doing anything.
And I guess that's how I envision it. We're setting the goals and objectives, and then the divisions say, okay, this is the plan for the city, this is what's been adopted. How do we work through and support those? And that's where the measurability will come in. I don't know if you...
Absolutely, I agree with that, definitely. Because that allows the flexibility that you kind of need for these to be higher level, and for, like, their plan clearly lays out an actual process that you have all had input into and have decided on is okay, but it fits with underneath this overarching framework. Yes.
Right.
Measurable goals are key.
Yeah. So,
I think when we first started this, like from the public works standpoint, we are the weeds generally. So a lot of it, it's like so many of these projects, and then it filters down, and it's like, oh, we're doing that, like that,
Yeah.
like now it's ours. So I think like with me, I was getting bogged down in too much of the weeds because that's what I'm used to. So, but like on like paving and some of these things, like we do have a plan for the paving. And I think when I first came, I was doing nuts and bolts of each thing. Oh, we have this, and we have this, and we have this, and we have this, as opposed to the big picture piece of it.
Yeah, and I think where all of us get down into the weeds is
Well,
when we
Public
go
Works
back
is
to
the,
our...
I mean, it's pretty,
Yeah.
when you're ordering chemicals for the wastewater treatment
Yes,
plant, you're in the weeds,
you're in the
you know,
weeds,
so.
yes. But I think, you know, when we all go back to be it the airport authority or infrastructure, whomever, that's when we're saying, okay, here's the plan, and then what's our role and how do we support implementation and achieving those goals and objectives.
And this also would filter into the redo of the city master plan if we ever find funds to undertake that.
Absolutely. And I guess I look at this, and I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are, but I look at this as very much a living document. So the city master plan may result in something that means we're going to change something in our strategic plan. So I think there's that back and forth there as we look at documents and what's going on in the city. And, you know, to your point about the waterfront, I think that a lot of what we're doing with the waterfront may actually be housed in this column called downtown, rather than infrastructure,
And
as
natural
we look.
resources,
And
it's
natural,
everywhere.
yeah. So, looking at those sorts of things, yeah. Alderman
Another
Shelby.
question, just about the comparison between this and the master plan. It would seem to me that strategic plan happens before the master plan and kind of guides the master
Mhm.
plan. So you just mentioned that we could have a master plan that requires that we change our strategic plan. And that's not really, is that the way it's going to work, or is the master plan going to be guided by this?
I think the master plan should be guided by this, but I think we'd be foolish if something came up in the master plan that made us go, oh, wait a minute. And we didn't, something just we totally hadn't thought of.
If there's something we haven't thought of, then I can understand.
Yeah.
But I would hope that the goals laid out in the master plan would go along with the
Right.
strategic plan.
Right. Oh, no, I agree with you. I have had situations where people have felt things were carved in stone, and I think we need to understand that sometimes things happen, but this should be guiding it, yeah.
Okay, I think it should be guided.
Yeah. So.
Not carved in stone, but it's
Right,
guiding it.
right,
This
right.
informs that process.
Right.
That process is now its own.
Yeah. Any other comments, thoughts about this? I know there were a couple of items here at the end we were kind of back and forth on, so I just want to make sure right now, and certainly as we move forward, we can move some of these things in columns. But anyone had thoughts about? Okay. Well, I guess Sarah, Director Marchand had gone through and taken each of the goal areas. We had identified the 7 goal areas, and she's come up with some sample goals. Are we comfortable with these 7 goal areas, or do we feel like there's something that could be collapsed? We tried to do a lot of collapsing at our last meeting. So if we're comfortable with this, then I think we can move on to the draft page we have and start looking at developing
I think we've
language for goals.
everything.
So everyone's comfortable with that?
Mhm.
Okay. I know some people were here and some people weren't for our last meeting, so just as long as we're all on the same page. So the first area that is on our working example is economic development, and it's the,
One thing, just on here, I'm just looking real quick, where would we cover public transportation?
It was under infrastructure?
Sure.
Oh, wait, nope, actually, you guys put it under,
No, economic
you
development.
put it under economic development. I have the stickies over there that you
Yeah.
placed underneath.
Originally, the conversation had been around infrastructure, and then as the conversation evolved, there was consensus that public transportation is really important for economic development. And, just as we look at even what's going on with our bus routes and the number of people that are using those to get around the city for their jobs, and as we think about rail. So that's where public transportation ended up.
I should have done it.
Oh, that's okay. So it's in public transportation, or in economic development, it's the 4th from the bottom in that column. So, should we start with economic development, which is the first goal label? And if we want to look in that column, again, Director Marchand has given us some sample language and something to...
You can ignore it, you can rip it up. That was the goal listed in the master plan under economic development, so I thought it was an easy place for you to start. Just trying to,
This is the goal stated in the last master plan?
the 2000 master plan under economic development. And it's pretty, it doesn't say much, so.
No, it does not.
It's safe.
It's very safe. And it doesn't include public transportation or land use specifically, which you put both public transportation and land use under economic development when you consolidated, so.
We also put affordable housing there. And to conversations across earlier meetings, the airport is listed there under economic development. We also talked reducing the number of free and reduced lunch eligible families in the city was listed under economic development. Rail.
Did you just say reducing free?
Reducing the number of families eligible for free and reduced.
I think that'll be a goal.
That should be a goal. So in other words,
Or an objective?
Raising the income of people in the city,
Yeah.
because
Jobs.
Right.
that's the
Right.
way the relationship goes.
right, exactly. I'm just reading
Yeah,
what's
not
here.
cutting
So
it.
we-
Yeah.
yeah. Reviews of permitting codes, land use, codes to support residential and commercial development, a comprehensive review of city zoning to update land use, procurement. The other things that are listed, they're milliard economic development and jobs, and attracting business and a business environment that attracts new investment. So those are what we have there. So thoughts about language. And we will be wordsmith. I was just looking to see if I have a whiteboard, but we don't.
I can pull up one of those things if you want.
Yeah,
I don't know. Oh, this is looks like it's turned around for a reason, probably.
yeah.
I think that, as I listen to you read all the bullet points essentially under the column of economic development, if we try to incorporate a lot of that in the statement, it's going to be getting too much into the weeds. And I think these statements need to be high level.
Really high
like you
level,
said,
yeah.
And short. I mean, this is nice and short. And we have to be careful that it says something. I think we could, for instance, say that the overall goal of the city of Nashua is to promote a balanced and sustainable approach to economic development. That takes it from just being, yeah, like every other city, we want economic development, to being, this is our number one goal, if that's what it is. I think that in the meetings that I've attended, where we kind of observed that economic development was kind of an overarching, and the other things were supporting that, then maybe this statement should say something like, our number one goal is, or our primary goal is, or our highest level goal, overarching, is
Okay.
sound economic, balanced and sustainable economic development. Is that reasonable, right?
I would suggest if there's more that we want to put in it, write the sentence with everything we want in it, and then take words back out to get it short and succinct again.
Yeah, that makes sense, that's fine.
So we have the director here. What does she feel that her department is?
Well, she's not economic development.
No, but it's under her.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was waiting for you to come in that way.
I snuck around the backside. It was right there.
Well,
So in other words, if Tim were here, what would he think his role was? I want
Well-
to make sure they balance.
I think, as we look at this, we've got, the last three speak to land use code, land use. We've got two that speak to transportation, rail and public transportation. We've got the affordable housing piece, we've got the airport and the mill yard. And then, as you pointed out, reducing the number of free and reduced lunch eligible families means that we're bringing in higher paying jobs and more families are earning a livable wage. And then the other two are about attracting businesses both new investments as well as existing businesses, so bringing in additional businesses to the community. So there are like maybe 4 or 5 big areas there. I think all of us agreed that the airport is certainly an important part of economic development, and that there's a real relationship between the airport and the rest of the city. And it goes, as the city grows, the airport grows, and as the airport grows, then there's services that are being purchased
Yeah.
and facilities that are being located here, so it
Years ago, the airport authority did an analysis of the amount of economic development it brought to the city. I don't know if it happened to that, but it was pretty significant.
yeah. Well, I think Alderman Schoenman, we've had that conversation about.
Yes, we have, and actually, New Hampshire DOT did an update on that a couple of years ago, and there is a significant impact. I'm here, for Alderman Cookson, but I did speak to Mike Rosenblum, and I've been on to the Strategic Planning Committee meetings for the airport. I think the airport sees itself as supporting, whatever the city wants to do. And if the city wants economic development, the airport wants to participate in that. I don't know that we should necessarily call out the airport in our economic development statement, only because it raises the airport from one of many organizations within the city that's supporting this role to the city and the airport. I don't think that the city, I don't think the airport wants to
it.
elevate themselves to that stage. I think they want to play a supporting role, whatever the goals are that the city
Well,
has to set.
I had actually written the bullet that's at the top there, and the purpose of it was the airport basically is very independent of the city essentially, and is not, we don't think about it when we think about our plans, and as a result, it's not well integrated into the city in terms of most people don't know it's there other than the fact that planes fly in and out, and that a better relationship would be better for both of us, and that that's kind of unique because of the fact that it's an airport.
So you would think that the airport should be called out in that overarching statement, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those resources that's big. Maybe we drop it out in the end, but it's just,
Okay. I just don't want anyone to think the airport's trying to, take
Yeah,
over the
no.
city.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the other way to think about it is there a specific objective under the big goal that points to the airport and maybe some other specific areas that we see as like priority target areas for development?
There are specific kinds of economic development that we have a unique opportunity for because we have an airport.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think you're spot on for that. And for somebody that lived in Nashua all my life, I think unless you have some kind of connection to the airport on a daily basis or a personal basis, you don't really think of it all that much.
Yeah.
But having that airport here is such a huge, tremendous asset to the city. And I think in the last couple of years, with the airport, they've had different events there and things, and so many people who've lived in Nashua all their lives just went, oh wow, like I had no idea, other than I drove down Sharon Ave and you see a runway, so. But I think from,
I'm sorry.
no, I'm just saying from an economic development standpoint, I think that's a huge piece to the city.
Particularly if you're trying to attract the high-tech firms, the biotech firms.
Absolutely.
Their management likes to fly on their own planes.
Yeah.
They have them. And this airport is ideal for management to fly in, do their reviews, and get out. I think that's an advantage. It's not moving product out. That's not what the airport
Right.
will do. But it does allow the movement of people on a daily basis.
And if somebody's looking to relocate a business to this area, that's a tremendous asset for those reasons. Some people, that would be important.
Right.
And that's kind of the economic development we're talking about. We're talking about new businesses.
New business,
Either starting here or located here. Yeah, the
Absolutely.
airport is
absolutely.
an attraction. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So I'm just looking at the goal statement, and the word that pops out at me as not meaning much is balanced. Balanced with what? Sustainable, I can sort of understand, but balanced implies there's some downside that we have to trade off with. I'm having trouble finding that.
Have them promote a growth and sustainable approach.
Yeah, balance is always to me kind of like you're holding yourself back a little bit.
Right.
Right.
We want to make progress, and but we understand we might not get there, or we
Yeah.
can't afford to, or what. I'm not the wordsmith, so somebody else would have to come up with it better.
So if we take those corrections, we end up with the City of Nashua shall promote growth and a sustainable approach to economic development that is consistent with the wider goals and objectives of the master plan and the economic vitality of the city as a whole. Parentheses, master plan in caps.
Oh, I just put that in there so you knew I took it from the master.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I would say shall promote a growth and sustainable approach. So you want to grow the economic development in the city, but you also want it sustainable so that you're not building buildings and businesses that go under in 2 years and but I still think if we're going to have public transportation and then economic development, we need to somehow key that into that paragraph. It
So-
doesn't have to be one sentence, it can be more than one sentence.
I don't know. I don't know that public transportation is part of the goal. It's one of the solutions that we use to achieve the goal of growth.
I mean, we could list the public transportation piece as an objective that supports this
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
overarching growth. In our past conversations, we talked about that and affordable housing as being under economic development because they support the growth of businesses within the city. And a variety of businesses. So do we want to keep that and go on to the next one, and then we can come back and,
Can I just add one
Sure.
thing? In this list about the attracting new investment and business, we don't say anything about retaining our existing businesses. And I think that's pretty huge, so just adding that word attract and retain.
and retain?
Would be important.
So something like the City of Nashua shall promote growth and retention of business by maintaining a sustainable approach to economic development.
There you go.
Is that what you're-
That sounds good, yeah.
Business growth and retention, business, well,
I was actually thinking of the underlying objective
Oh.
list there too. So I don't know if it has to be in there, but it just retaining should be somewhere in the objectives.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good too.
Okay. So, next one, right-of-way infrastructure. Under there, we have long-term infrastructure plan, roads, sewer, invest in infrastructure, good infrastructure, roads, streets, sewer, provide paving improvements to get city streets into a year-to-year maintainable position, walkable bike plan, walkability across the city.
So Somebody want to define a walkable bike plan?
Steep hills.
You're walking your bike?
Yeah, you have to walk your bike up the big hills, no.
Could that be
Bike plan.
pedestrian
Yeah,
bike plan?
yes.
Walkability and bike plan.
Yeah.
That was at the end of the night when that was written.
Maybe some places around here it's safer to walk your bike, but,
That's why we need a bike plan.
yeah.
So the goal that we have as an example, the city of Nashville will provide an efficient, safe, maintained, and connected infrastructure and transportation system that is coordinated with existing needs and with plans for future growth. So transportation system's in there, although we've moved it up to economic development.
I would actually strike the word infrastructure and, because I don't think it, I mean, it's talking about the transportation system.
Mhm.
Should it be bigger?
What are you saying, Brian?
The word says connected infrastructure and transportation system. The words infrastructure and don't really add anything. It's just talking about the transportation system in context, so,
That's what the sentence is
yeah.
saying.
And we've moved all of the transportation system up into economic development right now in terms of what we have from our last session. So the city of Nashville will provide an efficient, safe, maintained, that is coordinated with existing needs and with plans for future growth.
And I'm not sure the goal the way we have it captures what the need is. You know, it's great, connected traffic system that you can sit on 24 hours a day waiting for the light to turn green. It's sort of, you know, we need to meet the needs of the community, and that's a subsequent clause in the sentence, basically.
But the goal is to be about infrastructure, not just about transportation,
Right.
right?
Yeah, but that goal as written is all about transportation.
Right, right.
So maybe there's
exactly.
something else we need to add
We need
about.
to, yeah.
I mean, what other part of infrastructure would we write about?
Or right of way.
Yeah.
Well, and
It's-
again, to what we have, it's road, sewer, general invested infrastructure, paving, biking and walkability. I mean, those are the things that,
Which, except for sewer, is all about transportation. I don't know that we want to have a goal
Yeah,
for the
they-
sewer system.
Well,
Infrastructure
if you
is
call
gonna
it
be.
flow, transportation and
Keep it
sewer.
connected.
right, there, it's all about flow, right.
I mean, you have to define what your infrastructure is, which is buildings, streets, sidewalks, you know, and then you write a goal around what you want to do with all that. And there's a sort of a crossover on buildings because school department has the majority of city buildings, which we don't maintain the way we should.
But I don't know that we're talking about buildings in any of this at this point, right?
No, yeah,
Well,
especially
it's part of
not in this topic,
infrastructure,
right?
No,
It's probably one of your largest cost infrastructure items.
Yeah, but it's tactical, not strategic, right? In order to run the city, we have to have buildings and we have to run them efficiently, but there's, you know,
Around the city, we have to have streets and sidewalks. So, I mean, we have to define what we mean by infrastructure before we can set a goal.
right, and I think, as I look at these and reflect on the conversations we had, economic development had rail and public transportation, thinking about buses, as like the systems and how you get there, the infrastructure that supports those was kept over in the infrastructure column. So the paving, and just maintaining bridges and those sorts of things. I think that's how we ended up breaking them out.
Well, how about something like the city of Nashua will provide a safe and well-maintained infrastructure system to ensure an efficient and well-connected transportation system that is coordinated to meet existing and future needs.
Can I throw something in there?
Yeah,
I like it.
absolutely.
All the way up, I think it was great.
Absolutely.
The city of Nashua will provide, say it again,
I say it was well-maintained and
well-maintained.
A safe and well-maintained.
Safe and well-maintained
Infrastructure
system. And then I think, Brian, you used the word support. We have to
Yeah,
support.
I don't know what an infrastructure system is, though.
So just put transportation.
Yeah, that's why I was suggesting before, we just talk about transportation. If we want to have
Right.
a goal that's not transportation, write it as a separate sentence.
What I was going to add only was the word, instead of coordinated, just say, whatever the system is, that supports existing needs and plans for future growth. I think that puts the infrastructure, whatever it is, transportation or roads or however it's defined, into a supporting role for the economic development. And I think that's where it belongs. I think that's the role that it has.
So the goal is really, it ought to be easy to get from point A to point B.
Right.
Using multiple modes of transportation.
Nobody should have to be stuck in a place they don't want to be.
Right, so transportation could include the bike routes,
And bikes,
Absolutely.
Walking.
buses,
the airport.
Yeah.
the airport.
Yeah.
So that's not, that uses infrastructure.
You want to roll it all under
But
economic
that's,
development?
but that's, I mean, that's the goal. I guess I don't care how it's done, you know. The goal is to make sure that people can move efficiently from one place to another in the city to facilitate their lives and their work.
So
And
that's-
I agree with that under transportation as it relates to economic development, but I think under infrastructure, I'm looking at, to kind of build off of Commissioner Grant's language, a safe and well-maintained infrastructure, or whatever, that includes, sewer, paving, and sidewalks or whatever, because I think, we can't, as Alderman Dean always reminds us, we can't forget, like, our sewer plant's important. That's an important part of infrastructure. So I think that maybe just a blanket statement that it's going to be safe and well-maintained, and then under it, maybe something about transportation, to support transportation, to support sewer and wastewater or whatever.
I think we're headed for the weeds again if we do that. I mean, we ought not to have a strategic goal that involves the sewers.
But then do we have,
There's a problem that we need to solve that we have a sewer system for. I think it's reasonably obvious that system has to work well.
but then do we have just a very general goal statement that doesn't focus just on transportation?
What about transportation and utility system? Because there's a whole variety of utilities that the city maintains, sewer, Pennachuck's water,
Water.
but there's gas, there's electric, I mean, there's a
Right.
lot of energy.
Right.
So you could kind
Private
of
system.
roll it, just transportation and utility system that would then rolls up everything that happens in
Yeah, I
economic development.
mean,
Yeah.
the utilities basically are in the right of way, so we have to take them into account when we do things.
Right.
But, I mean, a goal, so from the city's perspective, do we have a goal regarding, energy costs?
I think we have, well, it says somewhere in here, reduce
Yeah.
energy costs and improve, it's under efficiencies.
Sees, yeah.
Improve efficiencies, look for ways to improve efficiencies at our landfill. I mean, we have solid waste infrastructure.
But we sort of have that for us. When I look at economic development, the biggest problem with economic development in New Hampshire is the cost of electricity. So if we, you know,
I think more, when I think of it under this, I think that's very fair. When I think about it under here, I think about it being a energy system that will not necessarily fail, that
Yep.
has backup. It's more of the hard infrastructure that supports the energy system than the costs, which are economic development. For example, like Eversource is doing a lot of improvements right now that are making it so there's not as many end-of-the-line people who lose power. They're connecting things back in, and I think that's an infrastructure improvement versus
Okay.
talking about the PUC and our new net metering rates, right? So I just see them as a little like the utility system.
As I think more about infrastructure, when we get into the weeds, it's gonna be in the VPW. You guys got the weeds.
That's right, he can take us there if we need it, is that?
Yeah, because I mean, I look at this differently. Under this, I almost look like infrastructure, and transportation's not part of this. It's really infrastructure. When I think of infrastructure, I think of roads, bridges, sewers,
Right.
you know,
Solid
the real
waste,
nuts and bolts,
Mhm.
as opposed to transportation, which is more under economic development, which is where we had put it.
Maybe infrastructure is a subset of something larger.
Well, I think in a much, much earlier conversation, there was a conversation around infrastructure, again, being related to economic development. And if I remember correctly, that's when Director Cummings kind of was like looking at the list under economic development, getting longer and longer. And we, you know, it was like, well, yeah, it all ends up supporting economic development. So do we want just a very simple goal that the city will provide a safe and well-maintained
when you think-
system for
When you
transportation
think
and
about
utilities?
it, even if we didn't do a lick of economic development, we still need infrastructure.
Right, right.
So, it's not like.
not really, not after everybody moves out.
Yeah,
Right.
right, but I mean.
Someone's going to be
technic-
flushing a
technic-
toilet, Brian.
Technically speaking, economic development keeps the city vibrant, but you still need infrastructure that's independent. And there, of course, there's correlation between the two, but.
I think we can get that with the phrase existing needs.
Mm.
If we, whatever we're doing, if it supports existing needs and future plans, then we're covering both.
That would cover it.
So that supports existing needs, is the
And
wording?
future requirements.
And plans for future.
Okay, for future growth.
So just so I have this right, the city of Nashua will provide a safe and well-maintained transportation and utility system that is coordinated, to ensure an efficient and, nope, I don't
Now,
know.
we'll provide a safe and
Should we-
well-maintained.
Should we make utilities a separate goal?
Item.
I mean, it just seems to me that it's, you know, the goal is very different.
Should it be a separate goal, or should it be an objective under infrastructure?
Like I say, I think once you say infrastructure, we're already down in the weeds, right? We want transportation and we want utilities that meet the needs of the community. So, you know, we can state those. And as Sarah says, with utilities, it's a little different because there's both the issue of cost and the issue of reliability and
Right.
sustainability. So I think that might warrant now a separate goal that, you know, we didn't have, when this stuff was written, we didn't have that problem. We had PSNH and that
Right.
was it.
Right.
Yeah, as long as you keep the word infrastructure, but don't go below it, because once you go below it, now you're into the weeds, but all of those things are at the higher level.
So Brian, I think what I'm hearing you say is that we just get rid of this whole right-of-way infrastructure piece
I would do one simpler statement about transportation and then add another one about utilities.
Okay, so in terms of a goal,
Yeah.
okay, so if
And
we,
actually, the one we've got there, we just say the city of Nashua will provide an efficient, safe, maintained and connected transportation system that is coordinated with the existing needs and with plans for future growth. I think that covers it for transportation.
okay, so if we do that, then do we take all of the transportation stuff that's under economic development and move it under there? So we've got the rail and I mean, there's only two, rail and public transportation, but move those under there?
We certainly could. It sort of makes sense to have, we keep moving them back and forth, but transportation is transportation, right?
Right, but again, if-
We have it arranged here by how we pay attention to it in the city, not by what it is in terms of our goals.
okay,
So it may make sense to put it all back under transportation.
okay. And then I'm just thinking out, if we put it all under transportation, then as we look at objectives under these goals, we would pull out public transportation, or we would pull out paving.
Yeah, the objectives may belong to different departments
Right.
when they get.
Right.
Right, okay.
That would be changing, it wouldn't say right-of-way infrastructure, it would say transportation.
Right,
Yeah, I would think so.
We could call it access.
Yeah.
okay. So then, do we want to develop, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Kim, I'm sorry.
So I'm just wondering, and I know we're looking at the table that we created. When I think city infrastructure, I think wider too. I think about the things that the city provides to its residents, and by far, just maybe it's the number of phone calls that come into our office.
Yes.
But by far, that is your trash and your landfill and your sewers and things like that. So I would hate to see us lose sight of those things by narrowing down, and maybe transportation is its own, but I think the efficiency of those systems and maintaining those systems has to be somewhere within the strategic plan, because I would be afraid that they would fall off the radar, and those are items that will make or break you in the end. They're, so we always have to be thinking about our solid waste system and whether we're keeping up with that. It's a place where you get into danger and you don't have a way out. So that's my only fear, is by narrowing it down to transportation, and it may be two different objectives.
So, but doesn't the goal there actually not relate to infrastructure, but rather to efficiency?
You could say efficiency, but I think you're going.
Our
where
goal
you're-
is to not have trash in the streets and to not spend any more money on it than we have to, right? Which is, I mean, that's basically an efficiency goal.
Yes,
think
but I think in the end, you're gonna see large capital costs that are
Sure,
going
the objectives and actions will wind up doing a lot of that, because it's, once we start spending money, we do get down in the weeds. But I don't think it's not our goal to pick up trash. It's one of the things we have to do to be a city, is to pick up trash.
Right, but I see the landfill as part of the city infrastructure.
But again, the strategic plan ought to lay out global things. When you get down into the weeds of how you're gonna run the landfill and pick up trash, that's in the BPW. We say, you know, we wanna do it efficiently and effectively, they're gonna have to figure out how the heck to do that.
I guess I see infrastructure as physical things,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Versus how we pick up trash and how we spend the least amount of money
Right.
doing that is a process and an efficiency. So I think you keep infrastructure and you're looking for an overall, that you're talking about the hardscape stuff, the real stuff, and underneath that is what you talked about, the transportation system, the utility systems, all of that, the trash, the landfill, all of the buildings, facilities even falls somewhat under infrastructure as the hardscape piece. And so it's an overall efficient, safe, maintained hardscape.
If you.
Or maybe not efficient, maybe it's just a safe and well-maintained hardscape of some kind.
Well, and I think the safe part is really important because you get into some of the health aspects of parts of our infrastructure.
Under the long-term planning and efficiency, all those public work things are listed there. The landfill, which includes collection. I mean, that's where we ended up putting, whether by default or by reasonableness. Those things that deal with efficiencies and improvements in city-provided non-emergency services.
But when you move from here to here, where are those?
But that's moving in the wrong direction, right? In some sense, we did this process backwards, and we always do. We started from the bottom up. I mean, just think about it as a blank sheet of paper. Just think as if Nashua doesn't exist and we're building it. What are our goals for the city, and then what things do we have to do to achieve those? One of the things we have to do is build an awful lot of infrastructure and figure out ways to deal with it. But our goals don't necessarily have to do with that infrastructure. They have to do with quality of life that motivates the need for the infrastructure.
If you just drop down to long-term financial planning, it says the city will effectively manage its resources, financial resources, to
Yeah,
ensure
financial.
citizens have great value for their tax dollar, and we maintain a high standard. So the value for tax dollar is my trash being picked up, you know? When it comes to, you know, are the streets being swept?
So you could take out managed financial resources, because you could just
We-
say
yeah,
resources.
when we get there, we can do that. I'm
Yeah,
just
but-
saying, I think what you're looking for is probably being addressed there, which was when we took all these things to get to that goal, you know?
Just to throw out the definition, infrastructure, the basic physical and organizational structures and facilities, i.e. buildings, roads, and power supplies needed for the operation of a society or enterprise. So that loops in the power. Also, the fundamental facilities and systems serving a country, city, or area as transportation and communication systems, power plants, and schools. So, that's what infrastructure is.
I'm just saying, the goals should address what we want as characteristics of, I mean, we don't have a goal to run a landfill. We have a goal to have a clean and safe environment in the city, and one of the things that necessitates is picking up trash and having a landfill.
Right.
But, you know, this is much more oriented, this sheet is much more organized around solutions and the things we have to do than it is around what we're trying to achieve as the user's view of the city.
I guess the other thing I need to know, and I asked it in the first meeting, how do we know when we're done with strategic planning? What is the output?
The strategic plan.
Is the ultimate goal to redo the master plan?
Mine
By
is.
this, I mean, is that right? Because back to
Some
again, what
people
is
it is.
the?
Some of it is.
Well, it doesn't mean redo or revisit or.
Some of it is to finish the master plan, because the master plan itself is primarily a land use plan. We don't have written down anywhere how we're gonna run the landfill. You know, some of it is to produce documents that say, these are the things we ought to be doing. You know, that quantify, so what is it we ought to measure in the landfill and try to get better at, you know? I always said that trash pickup's actually a really simple one, right? If we said, one of the things we ought to do is measure what it costs us to pick up a 30-gallon bag of trash and dispose of it. And then on a year-to-year basis, we ought to figure out how to make that cheaper. You know, that.
Well, we've actually done a lot of that. We actually just had a whole study of the
Yeah, we don't-
landfill with the CFO and whether that was gonna be its own enterprise fund on its own and.
We
and
don't
everything else.
articulate these things, the goals and stuff very well in our higher level plans. We're doing a lot of the work, we're just not, we don't have an overarching plan that says that's what we should be doing.
Oh, absolutely. I think that happens in a lot of the committees and boards. And then when it goes to another level, they say, that's never been discussed, like, oh no, it's been discussed, it just probably didn't get moved
Right.
to other people.
So the actual purpose of this just says that the mayor and strategic planning committee shall develop and maintain an official statement of policy and strategic plan for the city of Nashua. The plan shall be developed in a manner determined by the committee, approved by the BOA. The committee may review and revise the plan once each term.
If I may, if you look at a company that's going for ISO 9000 certification, the first thing the auditors are going to come and look for is a quality policy. And a quality policy basically says, we're going to do this, and it's the same words that are in the ISO standard, but it lists standard operating procedures that define how you get there. Then you get this book of standard operating procedures. And there you will find, oh, I need work instructions. So there's another series of work instructions that tell the person how to do it. So this is this tiered thing we're looking at. This is the overview. This is our quality policy. We basically regurgitate, and we won't, but for this, but in the medical device industry, it's regurgitation of the ISO standard. That's how you're going to live. Then how do you live comes after.
Say
And
what
that's
you
what
do.
I'm looking here.
Say what you do what you say, and prove it.
Absolutely. You know, absolutely.
Live
And
with that for a
ironically,
long
the,
time.
the lowest level of standardization in ISO 9000 is, could you do the same thing a second
And
time?
second
Right.
Same
time,
way.
right. Do it again. With the same results.
I think we flunked that, actually. I can't believe if we did it again, it would come out just the way it is today.
So what is the thinking of the committee around this?
I think if we go through this and pick each one off, and then look at it as a whole, we're gonna see that we've got quite a lot of the objectives covered. I try to think strategy, plan, tactics. We're looking on the strategy, that's the high level, and that's what we're getting here. There's gonna be stuff that's missed, but it's gonna be, if someone looked at it, they'd say, they know where they're going. And that's gonna inform the legislation and
So my suggestion would be this. This is a group of problems we know we need to address, organized functionally. What we ought to do is come up with a set of goals, and then on each one of these, there ought to be this meets goal
Right.
1, 3, 5, and
Right.
7.
Right.
So don't worry about whether this sheet and the matrix have the same structure, but just there's solutions that break down functionally by who's going to do them, and then there are goals that are supported by those.
Those.
So I would, let's go through the goals and make sure that it's inclusive, and then probably as a homework assignment, each person ought to look at these
Right,
and say
I
which
would
ones they
agree.
go with.
I would agree.
And if you come up with an item on here that doesn't have a goal next to it, we're probably missing something in the
Right.
goals list.
And Brian, I think that, the whole purpose of this was to at least help bring some organization
Yep.
to thoughts. And some of these, as you know from being at past meetings, reflect getting out of the weeds, and they're much broader than when we started out.
This is where this process has fallen down every time we've
Right,
done
and,
it.
and that's, but I think that, to your point, that's why, as Sarah and I talked, getting these goals down, and not that they're going to match perfectly here, but if we think we need to vary something, let's talk about it and get some ideas so we can come up with a draft that we can then reflect back on. I mean, I like your idea that we should probably have another goal here, that, the city of Nashua is just gonna provide like a safe, clean, healthy environment.
Well, we
or
actually have
something.
one, the public safety one.
Yeah. and-
Basically says that, so,
Right.
that's what I'm saying, some of these things, you wouldn't expect police on the sewer system to wind up on the same
Right.
goal, but they do.
And so then, the question is, do we really call that public safety? Or do we change
Right.
the name of it? And so, as we go through, looking
They might
at,
not even actually need names.
right,
You
That's true.
might just end up with a list of goals that don't
Right.
have specific names,
Right.
right? And-
I think that's, I think you're spot on. I
Yeah.
think we're
Yeah.
getting, I'm looking at infrastructure and saying, I don't see where that reflects on
Yeah.
because I'm looking at the title and then looking at the,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's where I
but
was,
I think
myself was getting
there's
bogged
multiple
down.
goals there that are infrastructure related, but are not entirely infrastructure either.
Correct,
Right.
yeah.
There's a transportation goal, there's a cleanliness goal, there's the school goal is the one that the school buildings meet. There's a whole lot of things that we do that interrelate in terms of what the end product is
Right.
for the citizens.
So under the concept of not reinventing the wheel, is there any way that we could get copies of successful strategic plans for other cities?
There-
I
there
did
are a
some
bunch.
Research, yeah.
You have some, don't you?
I have a couple. They're verbose.
Yeah.
And I guess my assumption, and maybe I'm wrong in this, is that you guys were looking for a pretty high level, clear, concise policy statement that everything else could kind of fall underneath. And even the shorter ones that I've found are verbose in nature. So I think they're more of a comprehensive strategic plan.
But are they structured so that you could look at one piece of it rather than the whole thing in its entirety? Because it sounds like they have gone down into the weeds working with the departments to expand the strategic plan to cover
I
everything.
mean, I've read some of those, and many of them are this sheet without this sheet. It's a lot of actions without saying, here's why we do that.
Actually, I looked at some of the ones for other cities too, and I was like, no, that's not what we want. And then I was just Googling, how to write a strategic plan, blah, blah, blah. And there was a workshop and a presentation with slides that came up from someone who I think is at KU. And he had examples of strategic plans. And one was from a government agency, and one was from Amnesty International. And it was just like strengthen relationships with blah, and then it had like 3 objectives. So they were very, very basic, and you could see the structure that we're talking about, that then the people doing it would take care of the weeds and the detail. But the plan itself was like 5 very broad areas, and then just the objectives. But the wording was very short, very to the point, and not a whole lot of detail. And it would allow for, like Brian said, if you're talking about some of these things, every department may have a piece, so they're gonna look at the plan and say, okay, this is how we address that.
Because I have a number of books on strategic planning for industry that we use, but they don't relate. They're business oriented and don't quite fit
Right,
what you do for a city.
right.
Much different objectives.
Do we want to go through and I mean, I think to Brian's point, just ignore even these titles, these goal area titles, and just look at what's here. Do we want to massage it? Is there something else we want to add? And just work through this, come up with a draft. We can get it out and then come back and meet to discuss it.
I agree with, I think it was Brian that said, you know, or come up with these goals without title, and then underneath it, individually put down what we think from this list is covered under it. And then we can see how much correlation we have and how much disparity we have, and we can work those out.
Because if you look at the public safety one, it's all about police, fire, and emergency response. But again, you know, Brian's comments around just a safe, healthy community, that gets all of that.
Yeah, the public safety, I think we had said was police, fire, you know, and public health, were the
Right.
big ones.
Right.
I can't think of any others we're missing.
So long-term financial planning, thoughts about what's there? That statement.
Well, we're gonna skip over the school one,
Oh, I'm sorry, the,
or, because I have. a
yeah,
few
the
comments.
the one that
Public
says
health.
education, I will just, yeah.
My personal feeling is that this goal has a few weasel words in it. We shouldn't be continually striving, we should continually improve. And it should be so graduates are well prepared. I think, you know, we're using too many of the
Yeah.
educational.
This is another one where we can strike some words and make the sentence better.
And make the goal
I also,
stronger.
think this goal goes strictly to what happens in our public school
Right.
buildings and not the interrelationship with,
Yes.
with the colleges, et cetera, as
The
well.
library, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we talked, you know, we've talked a lot about that bigger goal of, you know, workforce development and re-education and retraining, so not necessarily just public education for our students.
That's my comment.
So what are people's thoughts about wording?
I think Nashua will continually improve the quality of public education for all students, so graduates are well prepared for life and careers,
Period.
period. Yeah.
Yeah.
21st century is well on its way to
That's
being
right.
behind us at this point.
Did you want to say public education or just education?
Education.
Education.
Not public education.
Yeah, because that covers the whole gamut.
And is it,
We don't have a lot of influence on some of it, but. it's-
Sounds good.
It's certainly a goal that.
Right.
If something comes to us where we can make a decision one way or another, we would decide to make all educational institutions better.
so do we, are we really talking about graduate students?
No, graduates.
Graduates. of the
Graduates, meaning you
schools.
graduated.
Students.
So
Graduates.
graduates are well prepared.
But do we want that, or do we want,
Oh,
so
students.
citizens?
Just say
Or
students.
do we want citizen, I mean, because we're talking about lifelong education.
Yeah.
We're talking about, we could have a 30-year-old who lost their job and BAE is setting up a program with the technical college and we send them there, so we're
Should say
re-educating.
That's
Yeah,
one
that's
reason why
perfect.
you just say
They do.
students,
Right.
because your student could be 30, your student could be 40, and it's not necessarily just graduates that we're trying to prepare.
Yeah, I think,
Citizens.
but I think students, sort of by its nature, cuts it into
K through
kids in
12.
school.
Yeah.
Just
So we just say
as a functional
citizens,
definition. Citizens would probably work better.
because it's, Because that would say that
Two different
system is
networks.
available to
Yeah.
many.
I'm just
I'd
saying.
want to keep your higher, like, so you
Well-
want to keep your higher ed institutions
Right.
Yeah.
in there as well. But when we were visiting the community college and the BAE program there were 50-year-olds
Right,
in there,
right.
and they were called students.
Yeah. But I'm not sure somebody reading the plan necessarily makes that the implicit definition of students. You know, they're looking at kids, and when I read it, I normally read it as kids in the normal progression between kindergarten and the end of grad school, and not, you know.
There's different levels of education, and educational opportunity is one of the things we want to focus on. That covers all levels.
I absolutely.
Because you're not going to get in the weeds of the elementary and high school education until it gets to the Board of Ed's purview.
I absolutely agree with you that promoting lifelong learning education is probably one of our major goals.
So do we want to, instead of public education, lifelong? And then that certainly makes people know
Lifelong
students.
education?
Why not just
Why not?
education?
Or education.
Just education.
But again, if you just say education, people will take that to
K
mean
through 12.
the traditional school experience, right?
Mm.
Right, so, and I'm thinking if we put lifelong in, then it kind of changes your view of the word students that comes after it.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's a good point.
I like that.
Yep.
yeah, that, they solve the student problem.
Well, yeah.
We all knew it was easy.
Nash will continue to improve the quality of lifelong education for all students.
So they are well
So-
prepared for like, for
For
career,
life.
for life, for participating in the workforce, for careers,
No, it's,
Prepared for life.
for life,
it's just for life.
Just education,
for life,
yeah, for
okay.
life.
Okay. So they have one. Okay, so the one at the bottom of the page that right now has the heading long-term financial planning. The city of Nashua will effectively manage financial resources to ensure citizens receive great value for their tax dollar and maintain its high standards of financial stability. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you.
I think you could strike
Kinda
that
awful.
word financial in the first line. City of
Manage
Nashua effectively manage
resources.
resources.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
And do we want to change its to
I
A?
would take it, so.
Yeah. And maintain a high standard of financial stability
Main
or
high standards of financials.
I'm tempted to just cut it off
Yeah.
after tax dollars.
dollars?
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the first part of the sentence says all
That's
that
fine.
anyway.
Mhm.
Manage resources to ensure citizens receive great value. Do we want to leave the word great in there?
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
Okay.
it.
Can we go back to public safety real quick?
Absolutely.
Just want to insert prevention. So best possible police, fire, and emergency prevention and response. Because a big part of what makes a lot of this stuff work well is getting in front of it and the actions that are taken before there's an emergency.
So maybe we can then get rid of emergency preparedness. After.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I mean, you can almost just, the city of Nashua will provide the best possible response to emergencies
To
to
emergency
meet the needs
prevention and
of
response.
residents and businesses.
Well, and we had, Brian's wording earlier had been just that we would provide a healthy and safe environment.
Yeah.
And part of
Oh,
providing a
that's
safe
it.
environment is having good
Right.
emergency response.
Perfect.
And it gets the public health and the sewers working and,
As long as the police don't have to do the sewers, we're good.
I was gonna say, we keep getting our swords in there.
I'll talk to you about that later.
I don't know, didn't you ever watch The Fugitive?
Or worse, Les Miserables.
Secret Service do a lot of sewer.
Which means it needs a- I think just a healthy and safe environment, period.
Yeah, for sure. Well, simple.
So what do we have for public safety now?
The city of Nashville will provide a healthy and safe environment.
I'd rather use the word community. Because
Community?
again, environment can speak to bushes and the trees.
Yeah. I mean, do we want a specific mention of emergency response in there?
Or is that an objective that we could put in there?
Yeah. I mean, I'm comfortable with it, I'm just
Yeah.
asking.
So on each one of these goals, we're gonna put some objectives. That as low as we're going to go, right? Okay.
Yep.
And then the objectives will then be somehow by someone rolled out to the different departments.
The different
Or
divisions
boards.
will look at the strategic plans, the boards and commissions, and say, okay, this is where we fit in here, and they will develop
Yeah.
from there.
So that's where we'll bring out the sewers from the police cars.
Right.
Appreciate that.
I think the sewer waste would be pretty harmful to firearms and carry as well. So that could-
Okay, so the next one, if you flip the page, it's titled from before Arts, Culture, and Recreation. We had talked about natural resources being under that, so the recreation captures it. The city of Nashville will actively grow and support efforts to make the city of Nashville a regional center for arts, culture, and recreation.
About just willing support.
Will support?
Yeah.
Thoughts? Support, just support instead of grow?
Fine, yeah.
So that sort of says we have enough already.
Ready?
I was gonna insert it by opening the art center in the Alex location, but maybe that would.
That may be in the weeds.
That's next Tuesday's meeting.
Just
Isn't-
kidding, just
Isn't that
kidding.
the goal is to, the goal would be to develop the arts center?
Actually, you want a simpler goal on this one? The city of Nashville will make the city a regional center for arts, culture,
There
and
you go.
recreation.
It's actually, that adds to the economic vitality of a lot of our businesses.
Right.
Okay. And the final one that we have is addressing downtown. The city of Nashville will continue and increase its revitalization efforts to ensure that downtown Nashville is a safe, clean, attractive, and accessible urban center that serves as the community's premier social, cultural, recreational, educational, and economic marketplace. And that came out of the master plan. So Sarah didn't.
Why do we need all these others?
I was gonna say, we could have skipped all the others if we would have started with this one.
But this is only about downtown, it's
The
not
first-
citywide.
The first words I'd strike are continue and increase its revitalization
Right.
efforts.
Yes.
You can see 2,000 in there.
Right.
Yeah.
You really can feel.
City of Nashville shall ensure that the downtown Nashville is a safe, clean, and attractive
Right.
and accessible urban center. The rest of it, I think, is fine.
Period, yeah.
Hey,
There you go.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to keep?
Well, I think that serves as the, I don't know. We all understand that that's what urban center
I will
means,
see.
don't we?
Right, yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
you could kind of
Yeah.
skip that. That's- what
If
if
you
do
took
it
the
other way?
title off of that, being downtown, and you put it at the top goal that all the other goals fell out of,
You're
I
right,
think
absolutely.
that would be a great upper level goal.
Or
That's true.
the mission.
Mission.
We have a vision.
Yeah, we have a vision statement in here.
We have a vision and a mission already that we went over in our first
I was
meeting.
gonna say, we had done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we
Vision
should do
again.
is, once we get this done, like, resend all of this as a packet for everyone to look at, kind of as a more
Focused on.
comprehensive document to see what flows.
What does the vision say?
Nashua is a proud, vibrant, welcoming community. Nashua offers its people opportunities for personal growth, prosperity, education, culture, heritage, and recreation. Nashua is responsive to the needs of its citizens, continuously examining its processes to enable efficient delivery of services that enrich the quality of life.
Okay, one thing for a vision statement, that's awfully long.
I know.
It's supposed to be concise.
Well, we can work on that another
Yeah.
night.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
we'll.
You should have
yeah, go
seen the
ahead.
I'll just
earlier
send-
draft.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that was about 4 hours of work right there.
Right.
So I'll resend the vision and mission when I send this
Yes.
revised
Right.
to you
Right.
guys, okay? And then you can see if it fits within.
So for this last one, the city of Nashua shall continue,
Shall ensure.
shall ensure, and then do we want all this, that downtown Nashua is blah, blah, blah? Or is it the city of Nashua shall ensure that downtown serves as the community's premier social, cultural, recreational, educational, and economic marketplace?
Well, I kind of like where we went with just say, safe, clean, attractive, and accessible urban center.
Okay,
And
period?
stop there.
Okay. Okay,
And urban center sort of implies all those other things.
okay, all right.
Nice.
Okay, thank you for your help with this.
Yeah.
So, Sarah will send this out with the mission statement and the vision, and I know summers, people are on vacation, and shall we shoot for a mid-September meeting? So you'll have time to then
Yeah.
have your
Sounds
commission
good.
meetings, your board meetings, think about it.
We won't know until September.
Right, I know, some people like take August off.
The French.
I'm retired, I take the whole time off.
Yes, the French do.
I seem to
The
be busy
Italians
every
do
single
too.
day.
I know. Having lived
All
there,
of
they
Europe
do.
does.
Yes, they do.
Okay, any other thoughts, comments? And Kim's gonna send us the information from the budget, so we'll have that to look at, and maybe Tracy and I can work on something just to get some information from the chambers, so we'll have that to reflect on also.
And we ought to start looking at these to see which goals they support.
Right, and that's,
So I'll send that.
that was my thought, that we look at this to then think about how they might fit into some objectives under each goal.
Or do you want them to write objectives?
You can write objectives if you want to. And if you want to come with some pre-written objectives, or even email them into Sue. And maybe what we'll do is we won't use the titles that are on this paper we've been working off of, but we'll number them in the order they're in. Okay, so if you have objectives, the area that right now says economic development will just be number 1. So just send them in that way and we'll have a sense. Yeah,
I'll
Yeah.
list them that way, just,
right, so we'll keep them in this order and we can work that way by number instead of heading.
When we got rid of the headings, we made great progress.
We did,
Yeah.
yes.
Because honestly, I was looking up going, we're gonna be here till 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
There's a lot of addition by subtraction.
Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Great.
Simplicity is great.
very nice, to be
Yeah.
clear and concise.
Yes. Okay, any other thoughts, comments? Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn?
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and we are adjourned at 8:26. Thank you.
Perfect.